Hey everybody, welcome to the second installment of Priceless B-Movies. For my first review, I had decided to do Night of the Demons because it's one of my favorite horror films and a movie that I think is very underrated, especially in mainstream today. For my second review, I'm deciding to follow suit and do my review for Night of the Demons 2, which is a movie that I think is really good, but does fall short, as most sequels do, of being as great as the original was. So Night of the Demons 2 takes place a few years after the first movie, and thus it should. The film was actually made about 6 or 7 years after the first one was. I guess it took them that long to realize that they should do another one. Actually, around 1993, 1994, this was when there were a lot of direct-to-video slasher movies coming out. I mean, between Night of the Demons and the Leprechaun series, as well as others, we had a lot of direct-to-video horror and slasher movies. The movie basically opens and reestablishes the house and the character of Angela, now a demon, living in the house and preying on people who hid inside. It seems to have forgotten some of the rules that the first movie established, like, well, the demon could only appear on Halloween night, as the first sequence of the movie shows her appearing in broad daylight in some random day to attack two people who come into the house. After that initial opening scene, we're introduced to the kids who are eventually going to be the victims and slash survivors of this film. They are all, instead of being just regular high school kids, these are all students at a Catholic school, Catholic boarding school, and we're pretty much given the most basic stereotyped characters. There's three guys. One of them's in a relationship. One of them wishes he was, but isn't. The other is kind of a dork who doesn't have a chance with the relationship. We're also introduced to three girls. One of them's in a relationship. One of them wants to be, but isn't. And the other is basically just a tramp. We're introduced to these characters, as well as another character named Melissa, played by Merle Kennedy. Melissa turns out to be Angela's little sister. And whether or not that whole idea was necessary in the sequel, it at least pads and gives us someone to kind of root for. My only problem with the Melissa character is that she's kind of mouthy and kind of, she doesn't really evolve. She doesn't really change. She's the same kind of whiny character from the beginning of the movie to the end of the film. And she's really only there to tell people like, oh no, look at that. What happened over there? Oh, I saw this and it's horrible and it's scary. And she doesn't really serve any other purpose. This gets really annoying, especially in the third act of the film, because basically everyone just has to constantly rescue her. There aren't really any name stars among the cast, except for Christine Taylor, who shows up as one of the girls in this group. This is actually kind of interesting to me. There's one scene in this movie where a male character refers to Christine Taylor's character as Marcia, because she's real clean-cut and she's real reserved. This happened about a year or two before she was actually cast as Marcia Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. For all of you movie buffs out there, here's a little bit of trivia for you. A bunch of these kids end up getting in trouble the day before the big Halloween dance at their school, when they're caught being kind of rambunctious by a nun, Sister Gloria, I believe is her name, played by Jennifer Rhodes, who decides that she's going to ban them from the dance, so now they have to figure out something to do on Halloween. And this leads them to have the bright idea to go to the funeral home from the first film, where, of course, demonic shenanigans ensue. The acting in this movie is basically on par with the first one. There aren't any Oscar-worthy performances here, but everyone seems to carry their own weight. I do think that some of the characters are very underwritten, but you could make that argument with the first film, you could make that argument with any number of slasher movies. Because basically at the end of the day, a lot of these characters are only there to be killed off. I also noticed that there's a drastic change in tone, whereas the first movie is more of the straight horror film. The second one has a lot of comedic elements. I would even go so far as to say the second one is more of a dark comedy than a horror movie. Almost every kill is kind of Freddy Krueger-ish. Everything comes with a one-liner, everything's kind of silly, and the gore is way over the top. Speaking of the death scenes, I really don't want to give away too many of them, because while a lot of them are kind of jokey, as I said, they're also really creative. I don't really want to be the critic who gives away all the best parts of the film and all the kills in the movie. I will say that if you're wanting a real bloody, real kind of fun movie that doesn't take itself so seriously, you can't really go wrong with Night of the Demons 2. You can't really go wrong with any of them except for maybe the third one. This film does still have several imaginative elements other than the death sequences, and once again, I am kind of upset that it deviates from the rules set of the first film. In this film, Angela is allowed to step out of the house and follow these kids back to the school, which seems like a great idea until you think about it and go, well, that kind of negates the whole purpose of the demons being secluded to the funeral home. There is an explanation given in the movie, but it's always one that I thought was kind of off. I didn't think that it really was very good excuse. I think that they just thought, we have to make this a sequel, we have to make this bigger and grander, and so they kind of, as I said, deviate from a lot of the boundaries set in the first movie. There's also an extended ending sequence that seems kind of tacked on. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of those examples of a studio deciding, okay, what we have here is great, but let's go in and reshoot an additional sequence to the ending. The ending really does seem kind of out of place. It seems like the movie ends 2 or 3 times before it actually does. I really do think if you don't have a weak heart or a bad stomach and you want to go out and you want to see a really fun, bloody horror movie, as I said, you can't really go wrong with Night of the Demons 2, but it overall is not as effective as the first film. Not to say there aren't some creepy images and ideas in here, there are, but they are really overshadowed by the humor and the kind of tongue-in-cheek style of the writing and of the directing. I'd give Night of the Demons 2 3.5 out of 4 stars. I think it's just shy of being a 4-star film because the tone is uneven. I don't think that they had as sure a hand on this one as they did on the first one. That concludes my review of Night of the Demons 2. Please make sure you check back in regularly to Priceless B Movies. Here pretty soon I'll be posting my review of the third Night of the Demons movies, and then I will be moving on to some other films such as Vamp, Free Fall, Highway to Hell, and a couple others, as well as 1 or 2 requests that I've had thrown my way. If there is a film that's horror or fantasy or crime or anything of the like that you think is underrated or not very well known that you would like to hear my opinion on, please leave the title in the comment section below and I will see what I can do. I hope you enjoyed this installment of Priceless B Movies. Please stay tuned for more.